Hey everyone, I'm Stephen Brantley,
And I'm Michael Diego.
and we are the Social Enterprise Guys.
We're helping social enterprises connect with other social enterprises to do good business better.
All right, this episode we have Zach Thanasilangkul, and he is a social enterprise marketing coach, and he's going to be speaking about content creation for social enterprises. And I think we both found it to be a very valuable episode. The name of his business is Mission Driven Impact. And so he's really focused on helping social enterprises and nonprofits figure out who they are as an organization, really clarify their identity, and then communicate it to others. And then we'll go over several different tactics for how you can do that better.
Yeah, not only just tactics, but we'll talk about what are the reasons that make content marketing an effective method of reaching your audience. We'll cover which platforms you can use and which ones, or how you determine which ones are best suited for your business. We'll talk about short and long-term tactics of getting your message to your audience. And we'll spend a good bit of time speaking about what is most important to Zach, is really clarifying that message for your business, and also just aligning on that bigger picture. There will also be a free guide that we'll attach in the notes below. But essentially, it's titled "The Only Three Things You Need to Raise Awareness for Your Social Enterprise Online, Even If You Have a Small Budget and No Idea Where to Start." So this will be a 5 to 7 page guide to really get you kickstarted on content marketing and reaching your audience.
Yeah. And, follow Zach on LinkedIn, request to connect with him, and also join our Facebook group, Social Enterprise Guys Facebook group. And, as we always say, that's where we really grow in our community. You can find all of that stuff down in the show notes. And we hope you enjoyed this episode of the Social Enterprise Guys.
All right, let's get started. All right. Well, thank you for joining us, Zach, and welcome to the Social Enterprise Guys. And we'll just go ahead and dive right in. So if you tell us a little bit about yourself and the topic that we're going to be discussing today.
Yeah, sounds great. I'm stoked to be here. So thanks for having me on. Basically, a lot of nonprofits and social entrepreneurs, they struggle to raise awareness for their organization. They struggle to get the word out. And so I coach them on how to clarify their message and then teach them kind of the basics of an online marketing system that works for them on autopilot, so that they can get more funding, get more donations, drive more revenue, and get people to take more action. So I usually do that through my signature program is a 12-week one-on-one coaching program. I also do a little bit of done-for-you work, and I've started holding workshops. Now that COVID's letting up, I'm going to start traveling a little bit, but that's the essence of what I do.
Awesome. Yeah, I know. As I was mentioning before, I'm super excited to dive in. We at Wise Assistant are in that growth stage. So we're exploring multiple different channels for content marketing. So excited to learn more about it. Where should we start?
Steve, you got an idea?
Yeah, let's go ahead and talk a little bit about content marketing and what it is and how it differs from other types of marketing. And I'm also very interested in this too, because I need to get better on this, and I also want to help my clients with this as well, because being in strategic planning, we deal with the long-term goals and strategies, but a key piece is always branding, marketing, because we figure out their identity through strategic planning, but we need to figure out how to communicate that identity. So let's talk a little bit about what is content marketing and how it differs from other types.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I love what you just said, that you figure out your identity and then something's got to go after that. And really, that's the bread and butter of what I do as well. Is really, I think what my clients want when they come to me is that marketing. But what we really start out with is that message, that identity. Who are we as an organization? Who do we serve? What problem do we solve? We get really clear on that. And then I always say your message, your marketing is a projection of that message. And really marketing, I believe in simplicity almost to a fault. You can think about any kind of marketing activity, content marketing, anything else, as getting conversations, right? In your organization, whether you're for-profit, nonprofit, revenue-based, donation-based, you probably have three main buckets, right? You're getting conversations, then you are having that conversation and trying to close that action. And then there's actually the work, the delivery that needs to happen. Marketing is where you earn those conversations. And all of that is a projection of who you are as an organization, the problem that you solve. Every time you talk about what you do, even if you're in the back of an Uber, and I don't know what the San Francisco Uber scene is like these days, but I got picked up in a Tesla. That was pretty cool. So a Tesla driver picks you up and says, Michael, what do you do? Well, that's your chance to let that message shine. It's the same thing if we're writing a blog post, if we're putting on a YouTube video, if we're putting on a podcast. And that stuff is what comprises content marketing. I mean, content is really anything that you say online. And the reason that I love this for my clients is because, especially for the clients I work with, they tend to not have a lot of money and they definitely don't have any time. Content marketing is something you put in the work up front and you start to reap those benefits over time. You start to get the flywheel turning. And so people find that you really get out what you put into it, and you can put in a little bit of work, very low cost at the beginning and all throughout. And then you can start to automate things like donations. You can start to automate things like sales in your store, signups for your program, again, whatever that action is. Content marketing is just a way of getting those conversations. And the beauty of it is that you can get these on autopilot.
So that would include anything from a blog post to a picture that we upload on social media, correct?
Yeah, I think, in the marketing world, there's a lot of, I guess like in any world, there's divides about what constitutes content, what can we properly call this or that. I think most people don't care. Content is really anything that you say, anything that exists as like a tangible thing online. Is that a kind of simple definition that might be glossing over things? Yeah, but I think no one's really getting hurt if we say that our content is our blog posts and what's on our website, our videos, our podcasts, anything that's tangible that says what you need to say in order to get a conversation and bring people to you, that's content.
Awesome. And what has been the most effective content that we could create as a business?
I mean, that's different for every business, I would say. Of course, we can talk trends about how, that I think it was a Cisco report came out a while ago that like 81% of the internet is now video based and things like that. So we can talk about, the different mediums of communication that you have, whether it's video, whether it's audio, whether it's text. We can talk about the different platforms we can use, things like YouTube, things like, Stitcher, Apple Podcasts. We can think about those as content platforms. We can also think about social media platforms as content platforms, right? With LinkedIn, for example, I'm really active on LinkedIn, and you can now write articles, LinkedIn polls, you can have videos, images on LinkedIn. But ultimately, when to go back to your question, when people say, what's the best or what's the most effective bang for a buck, I say it's what your audience wants. What do they like to consume, and where do they like to consume it? You got to go where the fish are. It's one thing to, you can cast it. I don't know, I'm trying to use it. I'm not a fisherman, but you can use some sort of random tool. You can use a spear and, hit the spear in the river where there are no fish. And you can call that, for better or worse, content. Or you can figure out what's the best fishing pole for the job and where's the pond where the fish are. As a business, that's what you're trying to line up, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, let's talk about some of the different. So there are different types of content that you could deliver. Text, media, or text, audio, video, and then you can use different platforms to do that. Are there any generalizations that you can make of certain industries or certain types of businesses benefit from different content over others?
Yes and no. I would say it's less about the industry and more, I think, about what is available to you and resources in your business. So when we think about, just to make things more tangible, right? We think we can communicate over text, the written word, audio, things people listen to, video, things people, well, I guess, watch and listen to at the same time. Now, in general, when we start to apply these to platforms, we see that a different amount and a different type of work is required to kind of make these things effective for your organization, right? So you can write a blog post, and if you're a strong writer, if you're a quick writer, or if you have the ability to outsource a writer, it's pretty easy to bang out a blog post, put it up on your website, run some ads to it, or do some what I call community content promotion. And that's kind of that. Everyone by now kind of is familiar with the concept of a blog, right? Video is, I'm not going to say starting to dominate the internet. I think it already does. And video, the appeal of video is that you can see someone, you can hear someone. It's definitely the most human form of connection. But when we talk about, the natural platform for video, YouTube, or even if you use LinkedIn video, native social media video, you start to need a lot of work. You got to worry about your setup, your lighting. You need to make sure that your thumbnail is engaging. People click away pretty quickly. So there's typically a heavy amount of editing that's involved to make sure that people are, remain engaged, audience retention. And, with audio and a podcast, it's very intimate, so you have people who, the classic example is, people who have a long commute in their car to the office. I think about a great podcast like John Lee Dumas's Entrepreneurs on Fire. He started that podcast because he knew that his ideal client, that avatar he had in his mind, the person he wanted to create content for, he knew that they would be listening to his podcast on the way to and from work. He said his ideal clients had 20, 25-minute commute. So he made a 20, 25-minute podcast. Very intimate. It's like a radio show. For me and my audience does not have a lot of time. My audience might be listening to podcasts, but they're not drowning an hour unless it's just something in the background. So I try to create sweet spot 10-minute videos. You can watch them on your lunch break, have a little marketing challenge for the week. And that's that. So, again, it's not necessarily what works for each industry. It's more, what do you have at your disposal and what does your audience have at their disposal? Does that make sense?
Yeah, and Stephen knows that I like to make things about me. So during this podcast, I want to talk a bit about, my company and like some of the content or marketing that we're going through right now, because there's a lot of things that are going through my head as you're talking about that, right?
Yeah, let's workshop it.
Yeah, no. So my company is Wise Assistant, and we're essentially like your planner friend for experiences. So we specifically help you curate experiences, events, and travel. And our audience typically is this more like type A planner, this individual that kind of steps up for the group and does the facilitating and organizing. And we've started to have a lot of conversations with these individuals to learn that, they're going out and researching on blogs a lot, right? So they're reading blogs to figure out about the places that they want to go, that they want to bring their friends, right? So in the beginning, and understanding that SEO is like a mid to long-term kind of strategy from our advisors, we wanted to create a lot of SEO content out the gate, right? And we've done that. We built a blog, we wrote about experiences that you can plan in Atlanta. We did that towards the beginning of the year. And we're still not seeing heavy click-through from that. I mean, I know that the content can always be improved. Can we talk specifically about SEO? Because while we are heavily on social media too. A lot of people are finding experiences through discovery and Instagram, right? But that channel for us has been a lot more effective. Like, it's specifically in the immediate like turnaround of getting people to our website and to sign up for a service. But we want to invest more in SEO over the next 30 to 60 days. So maybe we can just talk about, some advice you would give entrepreneurs that are getting into SEO, that have started that journey and through blogging, et cetera.
Yeah, I think there are a lot of different ways we can take this conversation. So I'm just going to hit something back at you and then you can kind of direct it. I think the kind of the first thing that comes to my head is that I get a lot of people who come to me, and I used to, before I was doing the coaching, I was a full-time copywriter. And so every copywriter knows what I'm talking about here is people come to you and they say, we need SEO, and they don't know why. They don't even know what SEO stands for. They just know that they have heard that SEO is the tactic to get found online. It's the same way if, you ask, I'm not really big on Facebook, but if you peruse some Facebook groups, people say, how did you grow your business? People say SEO, PPC, Facebook ad, everyone's got that one tactic. And I think what we were talking about earlier, Stephen, I think is you that was saying, you got to know your identity first. You got to nail your message, because every time we talk, every time we open our mouth or type on the computer, it's a reflection of that message. So we need to make sure that that is on point. That's we're telling a compelling story, that we're inviting our customers and our clients and our donors into a compelling story. Once we know that that is taken care of, then where does SEO come into play? I think SEO is really, in my mind, I think about it in one category. And I know a lot of more official SEOs might disagree with this, but I find that this works for me and my clients personally, that SEO should be treated as a long-term content strategy. And what that means is that over time, people are going to start to trickle in. And as more and more people trickle in, that gets that individual SEO flywheel turning. And eventually you don't need to do any short-term promotion like you would at the beginning, because SEO just kind of overtakes all of that. It's like when you're trying to build a passive income stream, right? You can't just build that first. You have to have a lot of short-term things going on. And over time, your passive revenue takes the place of, of what you're normally doing. And as some people call this mailbox money. It just comes into your mailbox, but that doesn't happen right away. You got to have that short-term stuff going on. And so I always say treat SEO like a long-term strategy, but don't treat that as your only strategy. The other thing is that SEO is a form of promotion. I think a lot of businesses get this mixed up when they come to me, come to other writers, come to marketers and say, we need SEO. You have to read between the lines and see what they're asking. What they mean, oftentimes in my experience, is we need to get found more. We need more eyeballs on our stuff. SEO isn't necessarily the best way to go about that, especially if you don't have proof of concept either in your business or in your content specifically. Only once you have that, you can say, all right, how 3, 6, 9, 12 months from now, 2 years from now, how do we get people to continue to discover us? That's where SEO comes in. Does that make sense? Is that resonating with you?
It does. And it's really interesting, so you put that as a kind of a long-term tactic. So what are some examples of short-term tactics?
I kind of group short-term tactics into what I call community content promotion. I actually learned these through my teachers who run a really fantastic content marketing agencies. They work especially with SaaS companies, and they work with a lot of people, but they define community content promotion as basically just that manual legwork it takes to get those eyeballs on your site. And I think I'll give you some tactics in a second, but I think that in my experience coaching entrepreneurs, coaching directors and executives, people look immediately to the SEO. People look immediately to, if they look at anything at all, a lot of people just put something up on their site and they think, oh, well, Google finds that, don't they? The answer is no. Or maybe they do, but what's the best way to keep a secret? Put it on the second page of Google. So you really have to do that work to get Google to pick it up. So that legwork in the beginning is in the word community. Who are other people in your space who produce newsletters? Who are other big social media players in your space? Can you ask them to share something? Can you collaborate with them so that it's natural for them to share it? A time-tested short-term tactic, which I would advise people to use with caution, is Facebook ads. Again, a lot of people use ads and they think, why is my money just being thrown down the drain? It could be their messaging is off. It could be the content itself is off. The ad copy and the ad creative itself could be off. And then all that is so tangled that you don't quite know what's broken. So I always say, get proof of concept first with that manual legwork, asking people to share your content, creating content that is shareable in the first place, letting social media networks pick it up and proliferate it. I think LinkedIn is a great platform for organic distribution, things like that. Once you get all that set and you get proof of concept in that, in those promotion strategies, you can start to run ads You can start to direct traffic to it because you know it works. And then over time, SEO is what will continue to pick that up. Does that make sense?
Yeah. And so when you refer to like, what would you call it? Community content promotion. Is that kind of like how backlinking works in SEO, or
yeah,
getting individuals to point back to your site essentially?
Yeah, I mean, the classic, again, at risk of oversimplification, the classic link building technique is reaching out to someone who has a similar audience and saying, hey, will you link me? It's kind of the same thing when you're trying to share a piece of content. You reach out to someone who that what you wrote or what you produced is going to benefit your audience, and pitch them. You say, hey, I really think this would benefit your audience. Like, it'd make my day if you shared it. You'd be surprised how many people share it. And that's the power of like influencer collaborations and things like that. The best way to get someone to share content is to feature them, make them look good. So, you're writing a blog post and you add a quote from someone well-known in your space, or you add a statistic from a recent study. Reach out to those people that you quoted or that you cited and say, hey, your research or your thoughts just added a bunch of value to what I wrote, and I know this is benefiting my audience. I bet it'll benefit yours as well. And, if people see that you quoted them, they're going to of course, they want to look good. The other classic community content promotion technique that still works, well, I'd say it works less than it used to, but still works pretty well for a lot of people, is posting in Facebook groups. And it's kind of the same thing. That's like you don't want to spam a Facebook group, but you want to get in there, you want to add value, you want to engage your storytelling skills. And if it's a story worth sharing, that group will pick it up and it'll start sharing in all their platforms, right? So you kind of have to do it like guerrilla style. You just got to do the legwork and pick up a little bit here, pick up a little bit there. And over time, it really does start to build up.
So to repeat the tactics back to you, the first one is the, reaching out to these blog owners, or
I call that
quoting them in your content.
Yeah.
And the other is more like Facebook group tactics, or more guerrilla in general, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, I'd say you got to think about them as all guerrilla, all just where can you put your face in front of somebody?
Is there ever concern of like, let's say, okay, like our blog is about how can I get out and explore Atlanta and plan these like enriched experiences, right? And there's a lot of like blogs that do similar things, specifically just about Atlanta, right? Is there ever any concern that like we kind of to some degree share the same audience? So any like conflict of interest, or, is this never really the case when having these conversations? Or
I think it depends on how well that community, interacts with each other. Is it a community that's based more on competition or on collaboration? In the social enterprise space, in the nonprofit space, one reason that I love working in this space is because it really is built a lot more on collaboration. Someone might be, for lack of a better term, someone might be competing for the same audience. But if you say, hey, like, this is something that we're delivering value to the same people, there's a lot of syndication that happens, especially in the nonprofit space. I mean, this is like the big way to do short-term promotion. It's just say, hey, I wrote something. Hey, I just posted this social media post. Will you go and share it from your end? People say yes all the time. It's not necessarily because, I want to be careful about not expanding this to like a lot more corporate people and stuff. I don't necessarily have experience in those industries, but in the social enterprise space and the nonprofit space, there are way more yeses than no. And there are way more opportunities that people want to engage in, but people are scared about that competition piece. If someone came to you and was serving your audience and they created a video or a blog post or whatever, and they said, hey, Michael, like, this is, we're serving the same audience. I think this is delivering tremendous value. Would you mind sharing it with your audience? Would your first instinct be, oh, no, you're my competitor. I can't give you any of the limelight. I can't even mention your name. Like, almost like pretending like your customers don't know that they exist. Your customers are very well educated. You might as well be open and transparent about it. Or what I find is more likely in the social enterprise and nonprofit space is, would you be like, wow, that's a badass video. Like, I would love to share that with my audience. They would they would think this is awesome. That makes you look good. That makes them look good. And I think to wrap that thought up, I said, in lifting others, we all rise. And that's, I think, really what our industry or our space, whatever you want to call it, is predicated on.
Yeah, that's actually something that I believe very firmly too. Is a lot of people worry about the competition, but I think collaboration, you actually gain more than the sum of your parts. There's actually a Star Trek quote, and I'm not gonna go into Star Trek.
I think this is anecdotal, but I would say that I have some experiences to back up that anecdote. Is that people are very, very tired of business as usual, as sales as usual. I think people are just tired of normal people, the people that we're serving as social enterprises, the people that we're serving as nonprofits or community-based organizations. They're so tired of looking up at the world and seeing, these big corporate cats just fighting each other and the big fish eating the little fish. I think people are just kind of over it. And I think we have an opportunity to really forge something different. Maybe I'm being idealistic here, but whether you want to call it a new economy, whether you want to call it just a new way of doing business that is predicated on community, on trust, on connection, on empathy. And that's why everything we do, especially when I'm doing that messaging and identity work, I always say everything that we do is based on empathy and authority. And part of that empathizing is working together, right? And I think that's what people are looking for. People are looking for human connection. They're not looking for brands duking it out,
Yeah, no, I love that whole conversation, just because what we're most concerned with, right, at the end of the day, is providing value to our audience, right? And that value typically is getting them out to plan and experience these moments, right, through our planning service. So at the end of the day, if somebody approached me and requested that I share an article about, a way to plan a great experience in Atlanta, well, by all means, that's something we want our audience to have. So we're going to share that information to help them achieve that outcome. So yeah, for me, it's a no-brainer. It's just like, of course, any way we can help our audience, that's what we're concerned with.
And from your audience's perspective, if let's say that they know about you and they're following you, and so they're really interested in your business. And maybe they've heard of the other one. Let's just say you have one big competitor. Let's say they've heard of your competitor, but they're not necessarily following them. They're following your business for a specific reason. They align with your values. They believe in what you believe in. They just resonate with your voice, with your energy. If you share something from your competitor, maybe someone else in your community, if you want to stop calling it a competitor or whatever, if you share something else, who is your audience going to think of and praise? They're going to be like, wow, Michael's company, Wise, they are just delivering a ton of value. And I don't even remember, like, this came from their competitor. Wow. Okay. Whatever. No one really cares. It's Wise Owl that delivered this to me. Wise Owl is a totally different company. It's sorry about that. But, it's this business that served me. They're going to remember you as the servant. And they're already, like I said, they're already following you. They're already vibing with you. They're already resonating with you. They already like you. They're in your fan club. They're not going to just suddenly jump ship for a competitor because of mutually added value. On the off chance that would happen, I don't really think they were the right person for you anyway, And so I really don't think there's a way to lose when you're approaching things, from a heart of service, from a heart of adding value, and from collaboration and community, because that's really what people are looking for these days.
Yeah, no, I love that. You've talked a lot about the importance of clarifying the message and that bigger picture. Yeah. Maybe we can drill into that, because I definitely, through trial and error, we have learned that the way with effort, right? So how can we continue to streamline our message?
Yeah, well, let me just do that right back at you and say what's worked for that in that trial and error, and what's been some roadblocks to some challenges that you've been facing.
Yeah, what's worked, and I think it has a lot to do with the timing, right? Like, we've tweaked our messaging to make it all about getting people out and exploring. And this whole, like, positioning it as helping you plan these adventures and getting back to kind of life as normal, if that's even, possible. But that's really resonated, right? And I'll say, as it relates to the blog content that we create, typically articles that we write that are more hyper local, neighborhood based. So we're talking to like the best things to do in Midtown or the best things to do downtown, right? Yeah. We believe that this is just how people think. They're like, I'm looking for something to do in Midtown, or like I'm near Midtown, or I want to explore Midtown more, rather than just specifically the name of a business or, the industry that business is in. So those are the things that we've learned very quickly and are doubling down in those areas.
Yeah, that sounds great. I think there's two tracks here. One is really that messaging piece. One, I think, is more from a content strategy piece. A lot of businesses, at the risk of sounding, confrontation, a lot of marketing agencies, a lot of content marketing agencies don't approach the strategy in the right way, I believe. Really, you got to look for, if you're writing SEO content, you're operating from keywords, right? And so people always want to find that balance between high search volume and low competition and things. I don't know. I don't think that's the right way for most businesses to be doing it unless they've been doing it for a long time. I think exhaust those bottom of the funnel, long tail keywords first, right? Because those are the ones with the highest intent. If I'm looking for things, let's say that I am traveling to Midtown Atlanta, staying in an Airbnb in Midtown, never been to Atlanta or something. Am I going to resonate more? And am I actually going to be searching maybe a high volume keyword like things to do Atlanta? Or would I be searching and would I be more likely to take action on something that was like best barbecue on 6th Street in Midtown? I don't know if there's a 6th Street in Midtown, but those bottom of the funnel articles are really where it's at. To make that more tangible for this audience, for social enterprises and nonprofits, right? When you're thinking about your donors, when you think about your customers or your clients, who are the people that are one step away from taking action? What is that step? Find the keywords that address that, right? So, maybe, I'm driving on the road or something, and, let's say I'm passing through Atlanta on a road trip, and there's a social enterprise coffee shop. They employ formerly homeless or incarcerated persons, and whatever. But they need to. They can't just rely on being a social enterprise. You got to be a good coffee shop that is also a social enterprise. And so something they could target online is, I'm driving through Atlanta. What do you think of Googling on my phone? Coffee shop near me. Am I really Googling, best coffee shops in Atlanta? No. Maybe, but that's not where I'm going to take action. I'm going to take action on the results I see with coffee shop near me. If I'm on 6th Street, I'm going to search like best barbecue, 6th Street. So those are really bottom of the funnel keywords. A lot of SEOs, a lot of marketers are scared of those because oftentimes they register 0 on software like Ahrefs or Ubersuggest or ClearScope or whatever you use for your keywords. People say, oh, people aren't searching for that. That's not true. They're listed, and there's so much data now to back this up. If they appear on these results, people are searching for them. And sure, you might not get 100 people who are searching them, but if you have, 100 people and only 1 take action, or you have 10 searchers and 5 take action, you don't need to be a genius to see which one you need to run the ads to, and the ones that are actionable, the ones that are, again, just close to think about the problem that you are solving. I need a coffee shop that is not across town. I need the coffee shop that's right next door to me would be ideal. That's not Starbucks. And so coffee shop that's not Starbucks near me, you got to start mining these keywords. And I think people have that backwards. Does that make sense?
I love that a lot. Yeah. You've already given me, we're going to create you've already given me a lot of ideas. I'll just say that.
Great. I think just to return back to the second thing with more on the messaging side of things, right? Like we started off this conversation by saying your marketing, everything you do is a projection of your message. And your message can comprise a lot of different things, but really at its core, your Stephen, you could chime in here about whether you think this is really the core of a business's identity, is who do you serve? What problem do you solve? How is it going to make their life better? What do they need to do to get it?
That's exactly right. Yeah. I mean, you start with with this strategic visioning stage, really honing in on your identity, and it starts with a vision and mission, and that should be mentioning who you serve, what you do, and where you plan to go with it.
Yeah, absolutely. And with that vision, right, I call this to my clients the happy ending. It's like, what vision of the world are we creating, right? So I always, if you're familiar with the story brand framework, I rely on that heavily with a lot of my clients. And, I always say that your audience, the people that you're serving, they are the hero of a story. They want something, but every story's got conflict. And so there's something standing in their way, right? A story without conflict isn't really much of a story. They would need help. There's no transformation, right? And so your job is to have that empathy piece, is to listen. It's to understand, hey, I celebrate and I acknowledge where you want to be. I also see what's standing in your way, and I understand the pain that's causing you. I can help you overcome that, right? I can help you be that hero of the story. I'm the guide. You are Luke Skywalker's Yoda. You are Harry Potter's Dumbledore. They're the main character, but would there be a Harry Potter without Dumbledore? No, I don't think there'd be some punk kid in the school. Same thing. Would there really be a Luke Skywalker without Yoda? Nah, I don't really think so. And so your business is in that business of transformation. What is the problem that you're solving? And then take that back to your content. Like, sure, if I'm a social enterprise coffee shop, I might be wild with the vision about, how we're reducing recidivism and taking people out of homelessness. And that should absolutely be part of your messaging. But there are smaller problems too. Like when I'm driving through Atlanta and I need a coffee shop that's not far away. That's a problem that I have that your content can solve right away.
Yeah, really insightful. Are there, as it relates to messaging or really anything that we've talked about today about content marketing, is there anything that you specifically provide tips or suggestions on for these more like nonprofit organizations, these on the spectrum of a social enterprise, kind of further on the nonprofit side?
Yeah, I think, I get this question all the time is, oh, Zach, this sounds great. This messaging sounds great. These marketing tactics sound great, but do they work for nonprofits? That's every nonprofit's favorite question to ask. Does this work for nonprofits? It reminds me of a Seth Godin quote where he said, people aren't asking, will this work? People are always asking, will this work for me? And so, as a nonprofit, just the short answer is yes. And you have to flip that question back around to your audience. What's in it for them? What does a donor want when they're donating? The people that we serve, what is it that they want out of our service? And again, it just goes back to listening, showing up with empathy, showing up with authority, and then being the guide, getting out of the way, letting them be the hero, and figuring out how to take them from A to B. So yeah, I mean, as far as specific tips or tactics for nonprofits, I would say nonprofits, as much time as nonprofits and donation-based organizations and social enterprises that lean this way, as much time as they spend nailing their mission statement and their values and their vision and coming up with like a super cinematic, video with all the great music in the background, most of them have not taken time to actually narrow down their message in this way. Is what is the transformation that you're providing? If I am providing, if I run a social enterprise that is getting rid of kerosene in Africa and replacing it with electricity or some other sustainable lantern lighting, there's that surface level. The problem that I'm solving is, kerosene can be dangerous. So I'm not, we're getting these out of homes, we're providing electricity or whatever. But then, Stephen, it goes back to what you were saying is like, what is that? What's the grand vision? Like, what's the happy ending? So what? Like I always say, what are the side effects of success? You get rid of kerosene, people are safer. So what? Like, this at the risk of sounding a little weird, what do I care if there's no kerosene in Africa? Like there's another step to this. And as, nonprofits tend to stop short in their mission statement and they tend to go too far, not go too far, but they tend to rely on a grand vision to make that mission effective. And there's too much of a gap between the two, in my experience. And it's because, the social enterprise and the nonprofits I work with tend to be early stage. They tend to still be in that founder stage. I don't think I've ever worked with an organization that's more than like 5 people, and so they're still in that stage of figuring it out. If you have a larger nonprofit, the United Way, they probably don't need my help. They kind of got this stuff figured out. They're playing a different arena. But if you're still just trying to figure it out, always ask yourself why. But on both, this is the last thing I'll say and I'll wrap up, is that why on both sides of the question, why is this an important thing to be fighting for? Why does this matter? Why, what is the happy ending? Always asking why toward that. But then also a question that I pose to my clients, especially during COVID, when 40% of nonprofits are, going to be eliminated. And I have some qualms with that study that came out, but more or less, a lot of nonprofits are hurting right now. A lot are shutting down. A lot are not able to serve the people that they set out to serve. I always ask my clients, so what? I was on a call with a nonprofit founder who, they help kind of increase diversity and accessibility in the coffee industry. And this is really important, if you're in the coffee industry, because there's not really a lot of organizations like it, but there are a ton of white dominated, male dominated spaces, just really toxic workplaces and stuff. So they're combating that. And I said, so what if you don't make your fundraising goals? And the director, she said, well, we're going to have to shut down. Okay. So what? If your organization disappears tomorrow, why should I care? You really need to dig into what's at stake. That's a big thing. I think if there's one thing that nonprofits should take away, so many nonprofits, and I've been there too, are scared to quote unquote exploit negative emotions. No, you really need to show people what's at stake. And if you don't believe that there's anything big at stake in your organization, you got to find another line of work. Whether you're a revenue-based business, a donation-based business, we are in it for a reason. We are in it to improve people's lives. And if we truly believe in our heart and with all of our energy that we are making the world a better place, I believe it's our moral obligation to let people know about it. It is our obligation to get in front of as many people as possible and say, I'm here to serve. You can't serve when people don't know about you. You can't serve when people don't know what's at stake. They're going to go on, they're going to close the tab and go to Charity Water, who does a great job of all of this, by the way. So that was a little long-winded, but does that make sense?
I gotta say that's one of the best things that you could possibly communicate. That's such, if you're listening to this, I would say rewind and listen to all of that again, because that's incredible value right there.
Yeah.
I was a development director in a nonprofit, and I can confirm I've seen this a lot, exactly the things that you're talking about.
Yeah. I was at a conversation earlier this week with a fundraising consultant who's she's very niche down. She works with a specific kind of nonprofit to really boost up their fundraising. And what I learned is that she's a genius. But the nugget that I took away from our conversation was that a lot of people are sitting on money. We assume, and Stephen, you could definitely speak to this as a development director, is that we kind of assume that people are giving what they're willing and able to give. But I think her conversation after so many people that she's worked with is that people are sitting on a lot of money and they are super willing to give double their gifts. They just don't know that you need it.
100%.
They don't realize what's at stake. And if you say, hey, you can't just not approach this with a scarcity mindset of oh, we really need this money. We're going to shut down. Please, please, please. We all see those really donor chasing nonprofits, and scarcity only lasts so long. Abundance is what's sustainable, I believe anyway. And when you look at successful nonprofits, they tend to operate from a place of abundance, not at this place of we need all these donors. If you approach things from that way and say, listen, this is really what we're in business for. This is really what's at stake in the world. This is the vision of the world we're creating. This is what we believe in. And in order to move toward those beliefs, in order to engender those beliefs, we need a little bit of a heavier gift. We're in a crunch right now. COVID's been hitting everybody. The pandemic has hit everybody. We really need your support for this reason. And we need this much of it. When you're open with those conversations, again, not from a place of scarcity, but from a place of service, a place of transparency, people flood you. I've seen it time and time again. And Stephen, I bet you can attest to that as well.
Definitely.
Well, Zach, yeah, how can our audience interact with you? How can they learn more from you? Like, reach out to you? Like, what kind of, just to wrap up here in the last couple minutes, like, how can they keep this going, this learning and all the great information that you've shared with us?
Absolutely. If you want to get a hold of me, my business is called Mission Driven Impact, but we're undergoing some transitions with our web presence. The absolute best way that you can actually meaningfully find and interact with me is by connecting with me on LinkedIn. My name is really long, so I'm going to trust you to put that down on the show notes. Also, if you Google Zach, if you Google or search on LinkedIn, Zach with an H, Mission Driven Impact. I'm the first person that comes up. In fact, I'm the only person that comes up. So you can definitely reach me that way.
Awesome. And you had there was a guide that you were just sharing. Can you talk about that?
I just recently created it's like a maybe 5 to 7 page PDF, tentatively titled "The Only 3 Things You Need to Raise Awareness for Your Social Enterprise Online." Even if you have small budget, no idea where to start, which I think describes a lot of early stage social enterprises and nonprofits. We started off this conversation by saying content marketing is low cost, it's effective, doesn't need to take a lot of time. And once you put in the work up front, it just works for you in the background while you're busy doing other things. Like, I don't know, like enjoying your life and living an abundance lifestyle. This stuff works for you while you sleep. So if you want to get that guide, 5 to 7 pages, I trust that we'll leave a landing page link down in the show notes. Enter your email, I'll send it right to your inbox. And I think that there's a tremendous amount of value in there. Take you 5 minutes to kind of diagnose which step of the process you're in, what you need to focus on next. And then, we can take next steps from there.
Awesome. I personally can't wait to read it. So
I'm looking forward to it too.
Get a hold of it. Well, Zach, thank you so much. Is there any last comments you'd like to make or before we close up?
If you take one thing from this episode, make sure that message is clean and crisp. Make sure you know the problem you solve and who you serve. And then on a personal note, make sure that you spend time every day, every morning, really feeling that, because again, if you're operating from a place of scarcity or a place of uncertainty, you're not going to go very far for very long, So make sure that you're operating from the right place. Make sure that you have clarity around what you're doing. The rest, the marketing, all the things that look difficult now start to fall into place once you start operating from a heart of service.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Zach. We really appreciate it. It's been such a great episode. So much knowledge being shared. I really appreciate it. And Stephen, do you have any last words?
No, this is a great interview. So thank you so much, Zach, for coming on.
Yeah, it's been a blast. Thank you.
All right. Have a good one.
Yeah.